Now, the colleges have already been directed by the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission to reintroduce the quota system in admitting students starting this new academic year. GTEC warns that it will withhold feeding grants and allowances to the schools if they fail to comply. But speaking on the AM show, minority member of the Education Committee of Parliament, Dr. Clement Apak, said, whereas the decision is unjustified, government must pay attention to the many abandoned projects in colleges of education across the country.
That my own checks with the principals of colleges of education, looking at the figures the year before, 2 years before this coming academic year, clearly indicates that the argument that is now being proffered to suggest that this is being done to address accommodation challenges clearly has no grounds to stand on. But this is not to deny that we have not done well in expanding space on the campuses of the colleges of education. But that is not the principal reason. One of the challenges is this inability of GET-Fund to meet its commitments. And that is also a product of what I would describe as a bad policy. This government very early on decided to place a cap on GET-Fund, reducing substantially and even refusing to allocate the reduced amounts. And so when you have GET-Fund being starved of resources and you have GET-Fund being the principal avenue for, increasing and augmenting educational infrastructure, you cannot expect, some of these projects to come to a standstill.
Now, joining us for a discussion on this is Dr. Samuel Awinkene Atintono. He's the National President of PRINCOF. We also have Jonathan Junu, who is the National President of the Teacher Trainees Association of Ghana, and Daniel Fingi, who is the Deputy Editor of Teacher Education Journal. Gentlemen, thank you very much for making the time to join us. Okay, let's start from the top. It would appear that this discussion has become relevant in the wake of government's decision to issue a quota on admissions in the coming academic year. Now, it is clear that infrastructure is not adequate, but would you say that that is, in essence, the reason for government's quota, or might there be other underlying factors? And I don't mind hearing from PRINCOF first on this.
First of all, good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to the TAC president and all the participants online. And let me express my appreciation to my colleagues, that's the principals of the 46 colleges of education, including myself. I must state that I'm a president-elect because the handover haven't taken place, so Dr. Nyamiche remains our president until January 10th. Thank you very much. Back to your question. I want to put on record that I think every year we usually have certain numbers that we admit. Critically is the fact that since the colleges were converted to tertiary institutions in 2018-2019, 1 year had been added to our program. It used to be a diploma, that's 3 years, and therefore students had 1 year teaching practice outside college and didn't need to stay on campus. With a 1 year addition, making 4-year B.Ed programs require that all 3-year student groups are on campus. That in itself necessitates some kind of a project expansion in terms of hostel, and of course, classrooms or lecture room blocks, which all the colleges have to battle with. So what exactly happened is the fact that for the past 1 year, we have had to do some kind of arrangement to make sure these 4-year groups that we are now battling with are all on campus or come to campus at some point to take lectures. And then at the same time, we are also trying to see whether the infrastructure can be expanded, especially hostel projects. This year, the good news is that all the 46 colleges of education, Minister of Education have actually given us 400 bed capacity. I think it's 300 bed capacity across the 46 colleges of education, and this is currently ongoing. Of course, some have been started, some are yet to take off. There are different levels. So we had agreed that we have to manage the situation until the infrastructure outlay is improved. So in managing this thing, we had a meeting, which we all agreed that we should find a way by which we can do the admission in such a way that we can have these groups in place until we have all the infrastructure in place to get them. So I wouldn't say that there's a quota that necessitates what people are calling at, because it was something that we have to agree that what the infrastructure can handle is what we should have. So that's what is on the ground currently. And I would want all of us to understand that context. Looking at what you have shown here, and particularly the abandoned project, that's where it's a concern to all of us. Now, to think that Get Fund, the previous meetings that we had, we agreed that most of these projects needs to be completed in order to actually give the colleges some kind of space to be able to run their academic programs like the universities do. So our appeal, and from Princop Point, we have been making that appeal to Minister of Education as well as GTech. So the more or the earlier they complete them, the better, because if you look at some of the colleges, I take, for example, Gambaga College of Education. This is one of the colleges that got approved in 2018, and it just doesn't have any infrastructure on the ground. They are managing with classrooms that were inherited from junior high school, and they have a student hostel phase one block, which is stalled, model school blocked, multi-purpose auditorium. All these were started in 2016, but currently they really need these ones to ensure that they can conduct academic work successfully. It runs to recommend also have them. You have a major pair, you have a Presbyterian Women College, Agogo, also having auditorium projects, all of them stalled. But for us to run the colleges very well, we would actually appeal to Get Fund to pay or give us priority to complete them. Thank you.
With all of these infrastructure outstanding, are you suggesting that if they were to be completed, you would then be able to take in more?
Yeah, sure. Because as I said, a critical thing is that when we expanded to 1 more year, we didn't adjust correspondingly to the hostel infrastructure. So yes, if these ones were completed for most of the colleges,
yeah,
it will help out.
So that means your position as Princop is that the reduction in quotas is probably because of a lack of infrastructure, no other reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. That's what I said. That
I just wanted to establish
not all
that
the VA groups can be on campus. So
yeah,
we require that we must do something in the interim. It shouldn't be the same thing, because this year, if the numbers are reduced, we expect that by next year, if some of the infrastructure is improved. But I think critically, we all have to come to a dialogue to agree that putting all the students on campus is probably not the way to go. If we had a way like the universities have some students staying outside, it will mean that we don't need to control the numbers.
Right.
That's what it meant. But once we go by everybody staying on campus, then you cannot bring students to college and then expect them to be overcrowded or don't have space to stay.
Right. Now, we heard yesterday from the president of the TTAG, Teacher Training Association of Ghana, in the person of Jonathan Junu. He joins us again today. Jonathan, so now the issue of infrastructure is being thrown in. It would appear that a capacity problem is at the heart of the government's recent directives on quotas. If that's the case, does your group have any rebuttal at all? If there's no space, surely you can't be crammed into an already full institution, can you?
Just as you've mentioned, I think that if the space is full, it's obviously not going to be possible to bring in more people. But I think that Why don't we maintain the numbers that we were using previously? I believe that there are some colleges that can take more. If you look at what some of them took last year and this year, you see that there is a massive reduction. So I think that, like I mentioned yesterday, the colleges should be allowed to at least take more numbers, if not to the capacity they took last year, at least half of it. That would have been a little bit helpful. Moving away from that, I must also say that it's very unfortunate that most projects on the various campuses have been abandoned up to now. Projects that would have been solution to the current problem, if they have been completed, have been abandoned. There is a project that I have witnessed from the time that I was in JHS up to now. That project is still standing. It tells you that there is no commitment by government to get all these projects completed. And it's very sad. And I think that as people who are interested in teacher education, especially within the basic school level, we must all come out and speak on this issue so that government would come out and then push more funds there to make sure that these projects are completed. If it's becoming very difficult for government to do alone, then the space should be open for private investors to come in so that some of these issues will be solved. Because if we keep on training our teachers with this facility, these same facilities, it will mean that there will be a reduction in the quality delivery of teaching and learning. You go to a college, I know a college as we speak right now, when it is 12 p.m., some of the teachers would have to go and open their doors because of the structure they stay in, a wooden structure. They would have to go and open it down for air to enter because there is so much heat. All these things will not help teacher education as far as the colleges are concerned.
Now, Daniel Fengi, your organization participated quite heavily in the putting together of that report we watched earlier. What, in your estimation, is the underlying factor behind the consistent abandonment of these projects? Is it just a funding issue, or is there some politics at play here? Are there some projects that may have been started by people whose successors are not willing to continue? Are we seeing a little bit of that also happening across the country?
All right, Kojo, thank you very much. In fact, we have taken time, with the Teacher Education Journal, we have taken time to go around the colleges of education. At the moment, we've been able to confirm with 38 of the colleges that they have abandoned projects. And we have actually engaged 30 of them. And we can confirm to you that majority of the colleges have one or two projects that have been abandoned. Now, what are the factors? As you rightly said, there's a funding problem and there's definitely a political problem. With a funding problem, we realize that there are two major factors. The one is that many of these projects are funded by internally generated funds of the various colleges, and some of the projects were funded by the government. But we realize that the common denominator, whether government funded project or internally generated funded project, is the lack of continuity. And so a principal will start the project, but when he retires, the project also retires. And different principals come in with their own visions and philosophies, ideas, and so every principal will achieve their specific visions for which they came into the office. Same applies to the government. Different governments also have their own agenda, and so when they come, they find it difficult to continue with the project that previous government started. In fact, going around, we realized that some of the projects had as far back as 12 years ago, some 8 years ago, some 5 years ago. So we could claim that these projects transcend governments and they transcend principals as well. That's where we are able to confirm that partisan politics, internal politics, academic politics come to play in the completion of these projects. But whichever the case you want to look at it from, it is the welfare of our own teachers. These are people who are coming out to teach our own children. If we afford them quality education, we stand a better chance of getting quality teachers who would come down to also train our own children. And so I believe that we should take this as a collective responsibility and work towards ensuring that all abandoned projects accomplished or completed. Having said that, you asked whether this could be connected with the cap in the enrollment numbers of the various colleges. About a week or two ago, we saw a letter from GTEC instructing the principals to admit a certain number of students in their various colleges. Of course, some of these projects have contributed, abandoned projects have contributed to the limited spaces, and that have consequently also resulted in the limited number of students that the colleges enroll. And so, if we want to expand the numbers in terms of enrollment, then we may want to consider expanding our projects, completing the abandoned ones, and just some months ago, the current Minister for Education also mentioned that he has initiated a 300 capacity hostel facility for all the colleges of education. We wish that he is able to complete these projects so that all in all, we could post that we have given the teacher trainee the best of education, the best access to education, so that when they also come out, we can be proud that we have trained quality teachers and they have come out as quality instructors for our own children.
Yes. Right. I want to come back now to Prinkoff and Dr. Tintono. Doc, let me ask you this. If indeed the suggestion here is that, at least from the teacher trainees, the suggestion here is that maybe public-private partnership might be a way of funding the completion of some of these projects. What options are available to administrations of colleges of education in that light? Are there options for you to pursue such partnerships? Right. If you can unmute your microphone for us, there we go, so that we can hear you clearer.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I muted myself. So what I'm saying is that, yes, PPA is one of the options that we can actually explore, given the fact that we are confronted with this huge infrastructural deficit, and our IGF is not enough to sort of support it and get fund projects as we have shown here. Clearly, the capacity to also complete them is another problem. So yes, we can explore it, and I'm happy our TAC president also mentioned it. What it then means is that our students must be prepared also. Once it's a PPA arrangement, it will mean that payment issues will come in, especially with the hostel facilities. It will no longer be as it is today, where the students pay virtually nothing for the hostel facilities, partly because these are considered as, if you like it, they are almost like dormitories because they are not like the modern facility that we have. So that would be the only way out to one of the options. But I think I also propose that for some colleges, one other option would be for the students to agree that some can stay out of campus, because it is not possible. If you take Accra College of Education, for example, it started actually as the only day college of education long for so many years until 1985 that it became boarded. So you ask yourself, what have we done to ourselves? When it was day, there were students here. Then all of a sudden, we have converted it to a burden, and we are having infrastructure problem. So these are some of the options that we can actually explore to support the colleges.
All right. Now, I want to bring in Jonathan at this point. Jonathan, listen, the suggestion is that maybe it should be a sort of in-out system so that some of the students will not be residential. Would you be willing to do that if it could result in an increased quota?
Yes, I think that it's one of the options that we can adopt as far as we want to increase the number of intake. Some students would have to agree to stay. That's an in-out situation, so that we can take more people and then train them, so so that in the future we will have situations where there will be low teacher turnout in the country. Sometimes I find it very difficult to accept it when we say we are in tertiary. I always say we are tertiary by word, but not by practice. Because if you go to the other tertiary institutions, some of these things are allowed. So we must find ways of bringing them in, and then we can expand the numbers.
Okay, I'll leave the last word for you, Daniel. How big a problem do you think this is for government? Do you see them attempting to resolve the infrastructure problem as a solution to the intake problem? How divorced are they from the issues that you uncovered in this report?
Indeed, let me begin by indicating that in terms of the capacity of enrollment, they are not solely limited to the issue of capacity, because if you have accessed the letter from GTEC that instructed the principals to enroll certain numbers, the letter was clear that the government is ready to pay the allowances according to the number they admit. And so obviously, the numbers for admission are more connected with probably the payment of the allowance. And probably when these students complete the colleges, they are posted to various basic schools. And so obviously they are only posted when there are vacancies in the various basic schools. And so if you want to admit students and directly post them to schools, then you may want to admit numbers that will correspond with the number of vacancies available or that will be available. So in terms of the issue of enrollment numbers, I think they are more connected. Our findings, our studies was biased or could identify that the payment of the allowances and the posting of students are more connected with the capacity of not various facilities in the colleges. As we know, there are some limited facilities that are who can still admit more that the government has admit. And so we should select the two in terms of enrollment of students and the facilities that are currently. In terms of the facilities that are, I would say that government would, or even would have been some initial
Right. Right. Okay. We have to apologize for the issues with the signal at the end there. But thank you very much to our three guests for helping us navigate this conversation.